Welcome back, everyone. I've made bold claims in past videos of the genius of Lewis Hamilton. I've actually said Lewis is actually a genius in the fact that he's made Mercedes built the most successful car in the ground effects era for Mercedes. There's 2 seasons Mercedes did not listen to Lewis. That was the W13, W14. They chose not to listen to Lewis. And granted, they did get a win at the Brazil Grand Prix in the W13. And I would argue if Max Verstappen didn't drive into Lewis, Lewis could have won that race. But could have, would have, should have is not the game we're playing. I'm just being real. The most successful ground effects car for Mercedes is actually statistically the W13, oddly enough. But when I talk about success, I'm not just talking about points, I'm actually talking about race wins. That's what I'm talking about. So W13, this car scored the most points for Mercedes in the ground effects era, even though it was often described as difficult to drive a tractor apparently. W14, this car earned fewer points than the W13, but was more successful in terms of the team constructor position. W15, this car had more wins than the W14, but it still had an inconsistent performance despite the team unlocking more of ground effects regulation secrets. This is the car that Lewis was accredited to having so much development for. I remember at the start of the season, Lewis was complaining that the cockpit was too far forward. I believe it was this one. It was either this one or the W14. Could have been the W14, but the W15, Mercedes really, constructed that with a lot of Lewis input. Even at the start of the season, George was saying, well, this car is built for Lewis. It's designed for Lewis. I've mentioned this, of course, before. But nevertheless, 4 wins that season, 2 from Lewis, 2 from George. Say what you will about George. Should have won in Belgium, but to be honest, Mercedes almost ruined that race for Lewis and George. My opinions are a little bit controversial because I believe they should have just asked George to step aside and allow Lewis to continue his race because Lewis was winning outright anyway. But nevertheless, for whatever reason, George got disqualified. But why is this important? Why is this important right now? Well, it's because, it's because of what Ferrari has been saying lately about Lewis. It's the way Ferrari is not really listening to Lewis. And it kind of reminds me of 2022 season when Mercedes were not listening to Lewis. 2024, 2023 season when they were still reluctant to listen to Lewis. And say what you will about the W15, it was inconsistent. When that car was on a cold track, like, a Vegas at night, it lit up. Belgium, it lit up. Wasn't that the season that they took Lewis Hamilton win away from him in Austin because of plank wear? And they only checked Lewis' car and Charles' car? They should have checked other cars as well. They could have been eliminated as well. But who knows how the FIA and their crooked system work. I mean, I remember that Vegas Grand Prix like it was yesterday. Lewis was flying. And I might sound like a geek. Yeah, I'm geeking out. Lewis was flying, brother. I replay that race in my head. Just the way he was moving through traffic, I was like, Jesus Christ, when you give this man the car, he works miracles. And you know who's agreed with me, Ferrari? Let's check it out. Juan Pablo Montoya has shared similar sentiments. I'm glad I waited to make this video because these statements from Juan Pablo Montoya has only recently hit the internet and I can include them in this video. And I quote, Hamilton's frustrations come from the fact that he feels he's doing more than Ferrari is doing for him. I think he feels very committed to trying to make things work, but the team isn't up to par. I agree with Juan Pablo Montoya. Absolutely. Say what you will about Lewis' pace this year and, his poor performances, but his commitment to the team and trying to rework them and restructure them and motivate them to get back to the top is incredible. He's risking it all. He's not afraid to step on toes. He's not afraid to get people upset. He knows this is the team that used to say racist shit about him behind his back. But Vettel told him. Vettel told Hamilton, he said, listen, F1 teams, some of them are saying racist things behind your back. Who did Vettel race with again? Remind me. Red Bull. We know they're racist people in Red Bull. Ferrari. we know there's racist people in Ferrari as well. Not all of them, not all of them, but the evidence is mounting. Yeah, I do believe Lewis is trying to push this team. He's really trying to get them to see something in themselves that they can't even see. And I can only imagine how difficult that is when the team feels like Ferrari feels like crab in a bucket. They just want to step over each other and fight and kill each other. And they just want to fight over scraps instead of thinking about the bigger picture. And that's what Lewis is trying to get them to think about, is the bigger picture. But Juan Pablo Montoya has said it perfectly. He really has, you know, committed to trying to make things work, but the team isn't up to par because Ferrari is resistance. They're resistant to change. And it's like, you can be resistant to change when you have the fastest car. When you've been performing as bad as Ferrari has been for the last 20 years, you can't afford to not welcome new ideas and new thinking, even if Lewis helps you to build an inconsistent race-winning car. You know what, Ferrari? You've only won one race this year, and it's a sprint race in China by Lewis fucking Hamilton. So maybe you should listen to the motherfucker, because he's the GOAT. Juan Pablo Montoya went on to say, if you give Lewis the right tools and the right car, he becomes unstoppable. And that's what I'm echoing. Last year in Vegas Grand Prix, when Lewis has the right car, oh my God, he can work miracle. I think it was Austin last year as well. The man was on fire. Belgium, the way he managed the race from the start. The only thing Lewis couldn't do in that race was overtaking George. And they're saying, well, Lewis had faster tires. Lewis was on younger tires. Fair enough, but understand something. I remember a time when Max Verstappen had faster tires in Abu Dhabi 2021, and Lewis was on old tires, and somehow Lewis was still able to fight with him head to head. Lewis was actually catching him on the straight. So just because the other guy has older tires, it doesn't always play out that way. Sometimes, even though there's a difference in tire delta, tire wear, that doesn't always mean it's easy for you to overtake. If that's the case, why can't you overtake cars at Monaco that have old tire? Lewis spent an entire race on the same tire in Monaco once and won over Max Verstappen because Max couldn't overtake. So it doesn't just depend on the tire, it also depends on the nature of the track if it allows you to overtake. It's not just about your tire, it's also about your battery of the car in front, the battery of the car behind, the power of the car behind, the power of the car in front. There's variables. Overtaking other cars that have older tires, most of the time it's straightforward, but not all the time. Not all the time. Come on now. And common sense will tell you that if you've been watching F1 long enough. It's not like Lewis was on completely fresh tires. His tires were newer than George, but they weren't completely fresh tires. It's not like Lewis was also on the fastest tires. He didn't just came out of the pit two laps ago on red hot tires. There's also been times when Lewis chased down Max at the Hungarian Grand Prix on 20 lap old tires and overtake Max easy. He did the same thing in Spain. There's times when he can work those magics under the right conditions. But every once in a while, the cars can be unpredictable. Sometimes. Anyway, that was just a little rant. But I really echo Juan Pablo Montoya's sentiments here. They really are true. You know, Lewis knows what a car needs to be a championship-worthy car. He can point you into the right direction. The car might be a little bit inconsistent, but at least he'll be winning race. Ferrari's not winning race. In fact, you can't even get both cars on the podium. The car that Lewis has none of his driving attributes that he wants. He wants that rear end. He wants that downforce in the rear end, that stability. And I don't know about next year's car because I think they're bringing back rake. I don't know about next year's car. I really don't know about next year's cars. I think next year's cars are going to be very similar to this year car, just in a different dimension. I think once again, it's just going to be over focus on the front of the car because these modern drivers and the way these cars are built is just to be driven on the nose, while Lewis liked to drive his car with that stable rear end. I just think next year is just going to be a similar situation. But if Ferrari has a top 2 car, a competitive car for race wins, Lewis is going to come alive regardless. So Juan Pablo Montoya is basically saying what I feel, what I believe to be true. Under the right conditions with the right cars, right tool, Lewis becomes unstoppable. It is true. We've seen it. He's done it time and time again. He'll give absolutely everything next year because he doesn't want to leave Ferrari without his 8th title. He'll either win it or die trying. Please don't say those words. Please don't say those words. But Lewis being 41, it's easy. The only thing that's stopping Lewis from winning that goddamn title is I don't trust Ferrari. I don't trust the FIA. I really don't. I think he's going to give it his all. He's going to give it his all. No doubt about that. You know how Lewis is. And maybe he'll get a win here. Maybe he'll get a win there. But he's going to remember it as the guy that can still compete, even in his 40s, against the youngest guys. And you might be saying, well, he ain't competing right now. Well, give him a car with the rear end that he wants, and we'll watch him outrace everyone on that goddamn track. Come on now, you think Max Verstappen can perform that well because Max's car isn't built for Max? So how you expect Lewis to perform and beat Charles if the car isn't built for Lewis? And you might be saying, well, W15 was built for Lewis, but George still outperformed him. That is true. What do I have to say about that? I've got nothing to say about that. I haven't done enough research to even explain that. I haven't. I believe it was the W14 that Lewis destroyed the field, almost caught Checo in that car. And that's the car that Lewis didn't like, that Mercedes designed. Still similar zero side pod. Destroyed George, destroyed the field. And I don't even think he got a win in that car. Crazy. And this is another thing about Formula One that I've said. It can be unpredictable. The sport, the nature, the drivers, it can be unpredictable. It can. Lewis is not trying to overdrive the car. I don't believe Lewis is giving it his all because he knows it won't be worth it. Because he's not fighting for a championship. I think if it was in a championship fight, it's a different Lewis. He comes alive. But what is he going to risk right now? Driving into the wall, which have a high penalty, high cost. You know what happened to Ayrton. A lot of these young guys, that's what they would do when they start slowing down and they don't understand why. They'd overdrive and drive it into the wall. That's what Oscar is doing right now. Oscar keeps on overdriving the car because he doesn't have the experience of Lewis. Notice Lewis is not overdriving the car even when he's too slow. Do you have any idea the discipline and patience it takes to do that shit for the last 3-4 years? Despite the lack of performance from these cars has nothing to do with Lewis. It's not his fault. He didn't tell Mercedes to build a zero side pod car. He didn't tell Ferrari to lose the championship in 2022 and then went downhill from there. He didn't. None of this is his fault. The fact that he doesn't have the car that he needs is not his fault. But I appreciate a guy like Juan Pablo Montoya, coming out and saying what he said. He also said the sooner Ferrari listens to Lewis about how to improve the car, the better it will be for the team in the long run. If you give Lewis the right tool, they become unstoppable. The sooner they listen to Lewis. I agree with this so much because I even posted, I echoed similar sentiments. If Mercedes had listened to Lewis earlier, they would have been in the championship fight right now with McLaren. But as a result of that not listening to Lewis, Mercedes is still 1 year behind McLaren, and they have the same engine. Imagine if Mercedes had listened to Lewis earlier on, when they knew the zero side pod was just too complex to figure out. The zero side pod is not impossible to figure out, it's just that it has the wrong applications. I don't think the zero side pod was ever meant necessarily for this type of car, ground effects car necessarily. Because the way these cars are so sensitive, it creates too much porpoising. Even when you solve the porpoising, it creates other unpredictable natures in the car. And as a result, Mercedes is about a year behind. Ferrari probably 1.5 years behind. I'm just telling the truth, So I've echoed these sentiments before in previous videos, but I wanted to make a video specifically on this. Lewis does not get enough credit for helping Mercedes to build their most successful car in the ground effects era. He hasn't. In fact, the W15 that Lewis had so much input on is still an evolution of the W16 that they have this year. And how do you know it's still Lewis' car? Because it is unpredictable. It is inconsistent. But it's good enough to win George a race in Canada. I think George has won, 1 or 2 races this season already? I can't remember. but it's still good enough to at least win race. So I ask you, Ferrari, would you rather win a race here, a race there, have an unpredictable car, but at least it has a lot of potential to unpack, to unlock. That's what Lewis did for Mercedes. The W15 was unpredictable, inconsistent, but a lot of potential to unlock. And I believe with George and with Lewis, they unlocked a lot of that car and they learned a lot about that car. I think Ferrari could do the same. If Charles could help them build a championship-worthy car, he would have done that by now. And that's another video I'm working on about Ferrari. They can't build cars that have a lot of potential to unpack. Cars that are flexible. Ferrari build cars in very narrow windows that don't have a huge operating window, don't have much to expand upon. Just like the car that they have this year, literally, a very narrow window, and John Elkann has said, the cars improve. Mate, the cars improve, you've kept on developing and everyone else has stopped developing and you still haven't improved enough to even be fully close to Mercedes, Red Bull, or to McLaren. You're still fourth. It's Kimi's inconsistent that really makes Ferrari compete with Mercedes. And it's Max not having a consistent teammate. Max's teammate is in a similar situation Lewis is in the sense that the car is not built for you, so you can't perform well in the car. And we've seen what happened this weekend in qualifying in the Brazilian Grand Prix. When the car doesn't work for Max, he becomes human again. He's no longer Super Max. But when they fix the car for the race, he becomes Super Max again. And I'm going to start making more videos about Max, and his fans are going to hate me for it. But you know how they used to complain about Lewis only being this good because of the car? I'm going to sing that song about Max Verstappen for the next 20 years. That he's only performing well. Yeah, Max is only performing well in Brazilian GP because of the car. They fixed the car and he's only performing well because of the car. There you go. And I'm going to sing that song until his fans lose their mind. Because they did that to my guy for years. Despite us telling, no, it's more than the car. It's also his talent. They didn't care. Now I get to turn it around on them. So thank y'all for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.